Kia ora, welcome to the Guerin Report. Thanks for taking time out of your Monday night to join us once again. Busy show coming up for what's a busy week. For some people, it's Christmas week. Of course, Merry Christmas. To those in the racing community, that's the day before the Boxing Day races coming up at Ellerslie. We'll talk about those very shortly. The market out for all the races, including the Cambridge Stud Zabeel Classic, where they try and win their own race with this girl. That's Snazzy Tavi. A little bit later, we're going to catch up with one of the legends of New Zealand racing, the Babe, the great jockey Brent Thomson, talks all things racing and the most important decision of his life. And from the Babe to Baz, we preview Brendan McCullum, who's our special guest on the Guerin Report next week. Had a great chat to him just a few days ago. Fields are out for Ellerslie though. We have 3 domestic gallops meetings on Thursday, and the Group 1 is the Cambridge Stud Zabeel Classic. Here is your market already movement. This horse, Snazzy Tavi, 1.8 to 1.75. Can she get any shorter? Well, we all saw what she did 9 days ago at Te Rapa. She is unbeaten there. Here she is beating the defending champion of the Zabeel Classic in Campionessa and absolutely spanking her. The question is, this Thursday, she heads to Ellerslie for the first time. She hasn't raced right-handed, well, in almost 365 days. Boxing Day last year at Pukekohe when she was able to win the Stella Artois final. I rang Graham Richardson for you at home and said, are we concerned about this, Richo? Do we really care about the right-handed? He said, it's not a big deal. We think we're going to be fine. Maybe the bigger concern for her is a potential lack of tempo in this race. She has been settling back. Alvenson will go forward, so potentially a horse like La Creek, but we don't see them getting stuck into each other. So Snazzy Tavi, probably rock bottom odds, but I think plenty of people on track would love to see her win for the sponsors, Brendan and Joe Lindsay. Had a great chance just recently to catch up with one of the legends of New Zealand racing. Brent Thomson won 4 Cox Plates not long before he turned 21, but the most important decision of his life came decades after that. Here is a chat with the Babe. You won remarkably 4 Cox Plates here in a very short period of time at a very young age. When you look back on that now, does it almost seem hard to believe it happened?
Well, yes. I guess, like at the age of 17, coming over here and competing at that highest level, I'm not sure really I knew how significant it was. But certainly after the event, to when the dust settled, then to sort of take it on board. But I think, you know, when I came back and won it the second time, that probably hit home a bit, you know. So then I'd won it, you know, twice in three years, and I was still, 19 years old, 18 years old, and 19 years old, and so yeah, it was, and then, you know, later on in life you do realise how significant that was, because like it was a stepping stone into Australian racing, into a big job like riding for one of the biggest three jobs in Australia.
Everybody, when they talk about your Cox Plates, talks about Dulcify because he was so good. Was that your favourite of your Cox Plates, or did some of the others resonate in a different way?
I guess, you know, Fury's Order being the first, certainly, you know, that holds a soft spot. It was a bit of a war of attrition that day. It was a real old slogging match under the worst conditions possible, and so Family and Man was a pickup ride, and he was a wonderful horse to ride. I never sat on him till I got on him in the mounting yard. I'd never even seen him close up. So to ride him was, and Raffendale was the favourite for the race, and I followed Roy Higgins and came out and beat him. And then the year after, I got the job with Colin Hayes, and we had a very nice horse called So Called, and he'd had a rough run on the the Caulfield Cup, and I worried that race had taken a lot out of him, but to his credit, he he was bouncing on the day, and he was a sound winner of the race, beating Family Man. Dulcify was always just a different. He was just a different article altogether. He was, champion 3-year-old, winning both the Victorian Derby and the AJC Derby in those days, albeit on objection that day. But nonetheless, he was a champion 3-year-old and went on with it after that to, and the way he explosively won the race. They still talk about it today. So he was quite an incredible horse who, sadly we didn't see the best of.
Winning Cox Plates at 17, New Zealand's champion apprentice at 16. When did you first realise you were something special sitting on a horse? Was there a time in your life when you thought, I'm pretty darn good at this?
Modesty's always good to be modest. I guess I was, I had all the grounding of Pony Club into, shows and to hunting, and so my background before I became an apprentice jockey was pretty sound, and I competed at. Did
you have a feel for a horse when you were doing those? Did you feel like you were good on a horse?
Yeah, I guess so. Without a doubt about that. I guess I had a fairy tale start to it. My father had a very good sprinting mare called Andalusian, and he got her ready for pretty much my first race day at Waipakarau. I'm not saying she was a steering machine on the day, but she was pretty close to it. I guess to win a race on your very first race day is quite something. I outrode my apprentice claim from memory pretty sharply. So I was riding against the jockeys with the leading jockeys in New Zealand with no claim from a very quick beginning of my career. I guess it mainly unfolded pretty smoothly, if you like, Michael, I'll put it that way.
Can you see that now? When you see a young rider coming through, can you say she or he has got it? Because sometimes I like to pretend I can, but I'm not the babe. Can you see it?
I can watch a race and out of the corner of my eye, I can pick up someone and think that person's got a bit of ability, and then it depends on how they adapt to success to some degree. I mean, some people get carried away with success, and it's like a horse leaving it on the track. Some jockeys can do that, but again, I think if you're any judge at all, you can judge by the way they sit on a horse. As I say, jockeys that are balanced, he or she, horses normally travel well for them. They don't pull because they've got good soft hands. In terms of vigour today, that doesn't count so much. In a bygone era, a lot of emphasis was put on vigour. Today, that doesn't really count because you're restricted in terms of how effective you can be with a whip and how much you can use it. So it's not brute strength that gets a horse over the line. It's more the jockey's ability.
What do you think's changed the most, Brent, since you were race riding in your peak compared with now? The obvious one being the whip, which I know you were part of that revolution to move away from such heavy whip use.
Going to England, especially, I had to change my style quite dramatically because here we were used to, nearly hitting a horse every stride. When I see some of that old footage today, I cringe. But I changed because I had to over there, otherwise I wouldn't have got a ride. But to bring it back to Australia, it meant with quite a bit of criticism. But
did you also shorten your stirrups and you were more toe-in at that stage? Did you come back a better balanced rider?
Initially, I rode shorter, and at that stage, it was still with full foot, my foot in the iron. But but then I adapted a little bit later as I rode in Hong Kong and then back in England again when the likes of Steve Cawthon, he and Cash Asmussen really revolutionised European racing. And being Americans, they rode with their toe in the iron, and a lot of jockeys adapted to that. But to answer your question, yes, the change is probably what we see now, but clearly, that's by virtue of riders being able to see so much on television, on film, and being able to sort of, it's a bit like copying, and aesthetically it looks a lot better. We're sort of a bit uniform now with the world where we stood out a little bit, I thought, with that old style.
What was it like moving here from New Zealand in the 70s, which I'm sure was relatively quiet, to Melbourne and the hubbub and then winning these big races? What sort of culture and mental shock is that for a young man?
I guess it's a bit different, living downtown Wanganui to downtown Melbourne, and sort of, I guess also to land one of the three biggest jobs in Australia and all the bells and whistles that went with that.
What was it like meeting Colin Hayes for the first time? Intimidating?
I met him at Trentham when he fished me out of the Jockeys room and asked me to ride for him, and I honestly thought he was a lovely man and he looked after the Jockeys room. He came and said, "Oh, Mr. Colin Hayes wants to see you," and I thought someone's certainly playing a prank, and I walked out and Colin Hayes was standing there, and we sat down for, I don't know, 10 minutes, maybe half an hour, I can't remember, and discussed me moving to Australia to be his Melbourne jockey. And I don't know, probably didn't ride very well after that for the rest of the card.
It must have been like when an All Black first gets picked in the All Blacks. It must have been a very surreal feeling.
Yeah. Well, being still, I think, just an apprentice to my father, I had to obviously ask his permission, and the answer was always going to be, the affirmative. So it was amazing, and I shifted over, I think, in March of that year, into amazing stable.
You had enormous success here in this town, which is still your home, but then you went to England, which was a bold move at a time when racing was going through a golden era with those riders. You won an Ascot Gold Cup, you won a major race in France on Old Strawberry Road. What was it like riding in that era, headed by Leicester, but with so many great riders who we all look at like they were movie stars? What was it like turning up there?
Probably one of the hardest things I did in my career to, thrown in the deep end there. But I was extremely lucky by having Robert Sangster as my sponsor. So that opened lots of doors, clearly. But nonetheless, you're riding against the greatest names in the world of racing. Even Royal Ascot time, you had the likes of Shoemaker, Lafay-Pincay, all the great Americans would sometimes have might only be one ride. But in general, riding daily with the likes of Leicester, Pat Edry, and if you went over to France, you rode against Yves Saint Martin, Freddie Head, as I've mentioned, Steve Cash Asmussen. I mean, it was a litany of the greatest names, still the greatest names in racing. So it was awesome.
They had a very different style then to the Australian and New Zealand style of the time. Were they more advanced and better horse people, because we pride ourselves on how good a horse people we are, or was it just different?
Sometimes, I hear the criticism of European jockeys coming down here and riding. People don't really take on board to how good they are. Like, when you think they jump on a plane anywhere, ride anywhere in the world, from day to day, one day to the other, fly back and jump on ride in another country. I think sometimes we see them at the back end of a long season, and I'm sure some of them are a bit tired too. But the likes of Ryan Moore, like his CV is incredible, and God knows where it'll finish. In terms of he's still got a number of years left in him, but that's why he holds the biggest job in the world, one of the biggest jobs in the world, with Cornwall.
2 years ago, you made a big choice, which deserves some congratulations. You gave up the drink. Why?
Bottom line to it, no doubt it wasn't doing me any good. It was a bit of a fork in the road, which I made a decision to change. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation here today. Some of the greatest times I've had in my life have been on the booze, and probably mixed it with some of the best too, Michael, in the career that I had. But sometimes you have to take stock, and I'm absolutely pleased for a number of reasons. Health, job, we have a great job with the New Zealand Bloodstock. I say that without any fear of contradiction. There, I'm possibly the luckiest person to this side of the Tasman to have a position with them and in great company. But from a health point of view, I decided it was time, and wasn't a decision that was terribly hard on me.
Was it one of those things you drunk for the wrong reasons, or did you used to arc up when you were on the jar? Because people can be very different when they've had a few drinks.
Yeah.
Did you not like yourself as much when you were having a few? Or did you like it too much?
bit of both. But more importantly, I think it certainly led to depression. We all hear about sports people after their career, and I can sort of concur with some of that. But fortunately, I was a lover, not a fighter, especially with my height. So I wasn't
probably a good idea.
I wasn't aggressive, but I was probably thought I was funny. So the events that how it came about was Melbourne Cup week, 2022, and I was out for a lunch on the Friday before the last day of the Stakes Day, and we had quite a sizable team of guys there, and some pretty heavy hitters amongst them, and I stood up and just asked them for their attention because I wanted to make a statement. And I said, guys, Monday I'll walk through the doors of AA, and I won't drink again, and I haven't drank since.
What about for people who are watching this who go through the same struggles, and they start, then they stop, and they start, and they stop, which I think a lot of people are like on the drink or the punt or whatever your fancy is. What do you say to those people? Is it worth marching through those times to get to what I presume you think is a better version of yourself?
Yeah, I think, like from everyone's an individual. I guess it doesn't matter what addiction you have, whether it's gambling, punting, alcohol, drugs, sex. It's an individual sort of thing. I obviously what suits one doesn't necessarily suit the other, but I think you have to, like anything, Michael, you have to want to do something. You're either in or you're out. There's no half measures. Tried all those things. And even stopping and starting that that didn't work, and so it was either a full commitment or you're back doing the same thing 5 minutes later. So I've had people say to me, even recently, you'll never have a drink again, and I say no. And would you ever have a glass? And I say no, because I just know that there's no point. Again, I just say you're either in or you're out. In my case, there's no half measure, so I was happy to be completely abstain, and it suits me. And you know, I mean, I wouldn't be riding as I am now because I wouldn't have thought about it. I wouldn't have felt like it. And so it's, you know, everything that I've been doing in the last 2 years has actually been pretty positive.
You started riding again. What was it like to get back doing something you're so good at with an animal you love so much?
I was a bit surprised, and it happened by just going to riding one of Guerin's at the beach a year ago. And you know, I hadn't sat on a horse for 23 years, and so you know, the closest I got to them was like inspect yearlings for the company and paddocks, or at the yearling sales. That was probably about as close as I got to them. So you don't really get that close up and personal, or you know, padding's a bit different to jumping on a horse's back.
Didn't you miss the way they make you feel, the smell? Well, a lot of people find that's very good for the soul. Didn't you miss that during that time?
No, I don't think I did. I think the difference was that living in the city was always a bit of a challenge to go, you know, to go out of town, an hour and a quarter to ride. It was a bit. It had its, you know, there was obstacles in your face there, and so that was part of the reason I didn't do it. But I always said that if I lived in the country and had a property, I would have done it all the time. You know, I would have loved to. But living in the city, it made it a bit difficult. But once I'd ridden that horse at the beach, it sort of did have a impact on me, whereby I thought, that was quite nice. And you know, and then as you say, you know, you probably form, you know, you think, you know, you're back riding a horse, you know, and I you know, to say I enjoyed it, yes, I did. And that sort of inspired me as well to after our yearling sale that year, to say to Jack Turnbull, Guerin's one of his main man now, I wouldn't mind going down to Fingal to ride in the country, which is about an hour and a quarter, hour and a half from town. But you know, because I don't drink, that made it easy too. You know, you're not.
Well, it's a lot easier to get out of bed in the morning.
Firstly, there, and you're not worried about the cops pulling you up and blowing some ungodly amount.
Or Kieran Barr pulling you up for riding one
or falling off.
What's it like riding now, after all these years, being back on one at speed and one that moves well? What's it like?
Well, incredibly, the old feelings come back. Like, it's one thing going for a canter. Once you get, you know, the feel of them, that's nice. It's also nice to know that horses don't necessarily pull for you. You know, it's nice to know that your hands still work well enough. You know, once you get all the muscles toned up, bit of soreness out of the way, and then progress, whereby you know, it's only sort of been the last couple of months that I've been going at a speed. I rode a nice horse called Calcallo for Guerin. I rode him one morning, and I texted him. I said, I think this goes all right. Otherwise, I've lost my touch completely. And he won his first start. So yeah, in answer to your question, you do still have an idea.
What's the greatest race? What's the one that matters the most worldwide? You've been to derbies, I'm sure. You've won an Ascot Gold Cup, which not many people have done. People rave about the Arc. What's the race that matters the most to you?
I mean, I think having won the Ascot Gold Cup was fantastic, because it's always one of the pinnacles at Royal Ascot, which I always rate as one of, if not the greatest race meeting in the world. Just, you've been to it, we've seen it on television, and all the royalty, the pageantry.
It's a special place, isn't it?
Yeah, just amazing place, and you get so many good high-class race horses actually competing over those 4 or 5 days. So to win an Ascot Gold Cup certainly is a highlight. But I guess having won most of the others, the Cox Plate it certainly sits high up on what I've ever achieved.
You've seen so many good ones. I know this is an unfair question, but it's your fault for coming on the show. Who's the best horse you've ever seen?
Best horse I ever witnessed was Dancing Brave. When I rode in England, I in fact rode a very good 3-year-old that the same year as him called Sure Blade, but he won the Guineas, he won the King George, and he won the Arc, all in the same season. He was the best horse I ever seen. In fact, James Bester says the same.
Best trainer you've seen?
Look, I didn't spend a lot of time in America. I thought there was never much in England between Sir Henry Cecil and Sir Michael Stout. I thought they were amazing trainers. And in our part of the world, obviously, Colin Hayes, who I rode for in an era where you had Bart Cummings and Tommy Smith. In present day, it's hard not to be in awe of Chris Waller and Kieran Maher, what they're doing in Australia. Of course, David Hayes was before them and now in Hong Kong. But as we speak, in a present day, I think those two names that we mentioned just then, people around the world recognise them. So pretty lucky place, and the Hayes boys, Team Hayes, are doing an amazing job.
Here's a big question for a man with your talent. I'll split it into 2 different hemispheres because it's only fair. The best jockey you ever saw or rode against in the northern hemisphere, and the best one down here.
Well, there'll always only be one Lester Piggott, and amongst the greatest jockeys that I rode with over there. Here, I rode an great era with Higgins and Roy Higgins and the wonderful jockeys Ronnie Quinton, and just to name a couple. But I said it before, and without fear of contradiction, James McDonald is a megastar.
The best Australasian jockey you've seen? Why?
He's got all the attributes needed. He's instinctively very, very good. He's exceptional. I probably didn't take as much notice of him in New Zealand, but I certainly did by the time he got to Australia.
So special to get those thoughts from the babe about life and all his success, and the decision he had to make to give up the drink, and how it's his decision and it changed his life. Brent, thank you, and Merry Christmas from us here at the Guerin Report. Another special interview next Monday at 8 p.m. on Trackside. Brendan McCullum talks about cricket, coaching, and what he loves about racing.
I've had quite a fast-paced life as well with travelling around, so I like that it slows me down a bit, and you've got to go through that process of finding the horse and allowing it the time, and the days where it doesn't necessarily run so well, and then ultimately if you end up having that success, you look back on it and you go, that was kind of worth it.
Yep, we play Bazball next week on the Guerin Report from 8 p.m. on Monday. From all of us here in our small team, Merry Christmas to you and good punting to you on Boxing Day.